Hi everybody, my name is Christina Recchia and I am your instructor for the summer for the Management of Technology Change, the Ford on-site version, which may not be on-site based on some of the situations. I'm doing this recording so that you guys have some options and some flexibility, and if it turns out that we don't have a face-to-face class, you'll be able to see everything via the recordings. So this first video is just the overview of the class and some general instructions and an introduction. So hopefully this will be pretty painless. Just to give you a little bit of background on me, I took this class as an MBA class from Nancy Philippart, and it was just made a huge impact on me, changed a lot of directions that I was making with my career. I spent 30 years in technology working for companies like IBM and Sun Microsystems, and then lastly Salesforce. And you know, a lot of the things that we will learn about in this course I experienced firsthand over 30 years. I just never knew that everybody else was experiencing the same thing, and there were tons of academic literature that articulate these issues and talk about some of the solutions and ways around it. So it really helped me a lot in my career, and I spent a lot of time at Ford, so I'm hoping this will help you in your career as well. And I guess that's enough of me. You can certainly see me on LinkedIn as well and kind of take a look at what my background is if you have any questions. I also want to introduce, let me see if I can, that's Quinn back there. She is an official therapy dog, and if we do have a face-to-face class, I am going to try to bring her in. She was the official Mike Ilitch School of Business therapy dog for the CRM class that I taught, and I'm hoping to be able to bring her to your class as well, obviously if we have a face-to-face. So let me just go through some of these slides so you guys can see. Where am I? Ah, there we go. Okay, so we've done the introduction. We'll do an overview. We're going to talk about some of the requirements, expectations, and the course content. Some of this is liable to change, especially quiz dates and things like that. They're on a sheet that will follow this, but we may make some changes, and of course I'll make an announcement so you guys know what's going on. Okay. So we are going to have 15 sessions, maybe 14, if we can get all of the final presentations done in one night. I am kind of a stickler on that one. We'll talk about that later, but hopefully it will get us down to 15 sessions or 14 sessions instead of 15. So class one, that's this, the course introduction and overview. You did have some reading, and we will go through that in subsequent videos so that you've got, you know, the lecture notes that go along with that. Class two, we're going to talk about innovation as a system, management of technology change and tools, and your project proposal is due in class two. You guys will be broken up into groups. It should be done via Canvas, so hopefully by the time you see this video you have groups in Canvas. We're going to use, so some of these, the titles of some of these sessions are based on the book Switch, which I read when Julia handed this class over to me, and I thought it was a great book. I hadn't read it before, but really, really concise, great advice, and great ways to look at managing technology change. Class 4 and Class 5, these are new material. These are based on my research. My dissertation, I'm also a PhD student in the College of Engineering at Wayne State, and my dissertation is on software as a service and its impact on business performance. And so as part of that, because software as a service is a technology, I did a lot of background studies on status quo bias, which is basically inertia, a company's inability to move forward and make changes. And then innovation strategies, class 5, innovation strategies in response to disruptive innovation. This material is consistent with Nancy Philippart's version of this class, which I thought was really effective. Julia has some great additions, which I've taken out because I'm not an anthropologist, and a lot of her stuff was ethnography, and also the networking that Ken does, which is fabulous, but unfortunately I'm not qualified to teach it. So we've made a couple of changes and put in stuff that I'm more familiar with, that I really think is critical for understanding how this works and understanding where your company is and how to deal with it. Then class 6, the evolution of dominant technology designs. This is an Utterback topic. I have read Utterback so many times. I think it's a fabulous book. It is timeless. It was written in, I think, 1996, and you still see these, these habits and this progress happening today. And the dominant design is a really interesting way to look at how innovation diffuses. So then class 7, effects of new media on diffusion, motivating the elephant. Again, this is part of the switch. And when I say switch, obviously you'll see there's lots of other reading to go with it, and we'll be covering all of that reading. I try to make these videos not too long, so what I'll probably do is kind of chunk it out so that each reading has its own lecture. That way you don't have to listen to something for 2 hours. That's a little too hard to do on a computer. Class 8, attributes of innovation and the rate of adoption, managing innovation through understanding context, and shaping the path. So some of this reading also is from Everett Rogers, Diffusion of Innovation, which this book was originally written in 1965, I think, and then several iterations up until, I think, 2003, and I think he passed away around that time. Again, a fabulous book, and the stories are so interesting of how innovation diffuses. And this is not all about technology. It's not all about engineering. Some of these innovations are things like healthcare and things like that, which really give us all sort of a global perspective on how innovation diffuses and the importance of understanding the culture and its limitations, and the ability to leverage like the people within the community rather than just yourself or the residential expert, because that sometimes doesn't work out very well, and we'll read about that. So class, where was I? Yeah, class 9, innovation, decision process and change agents. Again, this is more along the Everett Rogers perspective. Social networks and technology change. This is going to be for sure, this is class 10. That'll be July 7th. That'll be an online class for sure. So you'll for sure, no matter if we have traditional face-to-face or not, that will be an online class. And then that will come in 2 parts. Class 10, I think, is where we have our guest speaker. Let me check. It's just in 2 parts. No, it's not. It's not till class 12. Okay, so that's in 2 parts. So we'll be discussing that over 2 different sessions. And then managing technology in times of complexity and uncertainty. This is obviously something that we will have experienced firsthand this year, 2020, with the coronavirus. Lots of changes in how we manage our companies, our organizations, our teams, and of course how innovation takes place. And we will have a special guest speaker. His name is Jim Parkinson. Jim is someone I've known forever. I worked with him at Sun Microsystems. He has a phenomenal technology background. He has been part of so many disruptions in his career and has dealt face-to-face with customers that are challenged by innovation, and has worked through it from a technical perspective. He's an engineer himself. You can read about Jim. There's a little bit of a bio in the slides that you'll see, but he is just a wealth of information and knowledge. And so you'll get a lot out of him. So managing technology in times of complexity and uncertainty, we'll take 2 classes because I think we'll get a lot out of Jim, and I don't want to rush him. So we won't be able to cover most of the material during that class, and so we'll have 2 classes for that. And then we will be on to our final project presentations. So your project, we'll go through in this slide deck some of the past projects, and we will be looking at what you guys are doing to introduce and manage innovation in the Ford environment, and we'll work through that, and then you'll be handing in a final paper and a project presentation, which we will be pretty strict on that. These are going to be half-an-hour presentations, which you're going to need to do in 20 minutes so that we can get questions in. I'm kind of a stickler for that. As a student myself, I've sat in classes where the teacher doesn't care and the students go on forever and ever. We're not going to do that. So you're definitely going to need to be concise and professional, and make sure that we stay within that time frame. So hopefully we'll be able to do this in 14 classes. So the teams, they should be posted on Canvas. I'm doing this kind of before they're done because you guys haven't even registered for this class yet. So hopefully they're in Canvas. Here are some of the Ford class projects from 2010. We've got a couple of slides of this. So if you guys are interested in some of these, or what they entailed, let me know. I can get you in touch with the professor who taught during these times. I thought it was valuable, even though I can't really comment on them, to show them to you so you have an idea of what these class projects are all about. Here are the ones from 2012, 2014, and 2016. So, and this one has the students' names in it. So, if you guys know any of these people and, want to check in with them on how their project worked out, I guess feel free to do that because, they're part of this slide deck. So the different approaches that we're looking at, the diffusion of innovations, again, this is Everett Rogers. The dynamics of innovation and managing that, that's more on the Utterback side. And then inhibitors to change, habits and inertia. This is the status quo bias and some of the other academic articles on how to manage change. Those are posted on Canvas for you, so there isn't a book for those two. You'll be reading academic papers for those. So so that's kind of where the perspectives are coming from. This kind of just gives you some idea of how that organizations are very social, and the culture and the technical systems are very complicated. And just because you or me, we think that this particular innovation is worthwhile and something we want to do, doesn't mean everybody else understands what we're talking about. Doesn't mean that they're going to do it. There's lots of inhibitors to change. We see habits on there several times. This is one of the main issues with managing change, is that you have to change people's habits, which is really, really hard to do. But we've got lots of great ideas and perspectives to help you manage through that. But there's a lot to do with culture. You'll learn about that a lot in the diffusion of innovations with Everett Rogers. Culture is a huge barrier to innovation and change. Some cultures are very, very strong and very resistant to new things and can really hold you back, and especially if you're not part of that culture. I think that's one of the things that Julia stresses a lot in her classes, that we really have to respect other cultures and understand how they work if we expect to influence them. So these are some of the resources. So again, I am recording this before this class really begins. So I'm hoping that we can get all three of these books in. If not, we'll post some of the material if we cannot, get access to all three books. I was told at one point that we might only be able to get 2 books. So so if I can't get them all, then we'll post the pieces that, I can't get in a book. So you'll either see them on Canvas or you'll be buying a book. So these 3 books are all terrific. Really, really timeless perspectives on disruption and innovation, and it's kind of interesting to me, when I realized how old these books were, how incredibly, non-changing the process of innovation really is. It continues on as always, but it continues to work its way through some very difficult situations. So this is my contact information. If you need me, you can always reach me via email. That's actually my personal email, but my Wayne State one is the same. It's christinamrecchia@wayne.edu. And you can always reach me through Canvas as well. And that's Quinn, our certified therapy dog. So anyway, this is a little bit of information, with regard to the perspectives. Culture is a system of learned habits, expectations, language, and perspective. And those are very powerful things when we're talking about innovation, when we're talking about diffusion. How do we manage all of these things? So this will continue to come up over and over again, and it's something that as engineers in a progressive company, you want to keep these things in mind. Things that are potentially holding back an innovation. How do we interpret these things? How do we understand which one or many of these are actually impacting our ability to move forward? And then what do we do to change it? Oops. Let's go back one. Okay. So some quick definitions. An innovation is an idea, a practice, or object that is perceived as new by an individual or another unit of adoption. So innovation sometimes is also defined as the commercialization of an invention. It's a more hardcore kind of definition of innovation. This one is much more broad, looking at just ideas and new things that are coming up. Diffusion is the process by which an innovation is communicated through certain channels over time among members of a social system. So again, this is a very specific definition. Using the word social system in there, we have lots of social systems, right? We have our families, we have our community, we maybe have a nationality or a country, our company, our work group within the company. All of these things are social systems. And so the bigger the social system, or the more social systems you have to work through, the more complicated the innovation diffusion is going to be. So I think sometimes when we have these definitions, it just helps us to kind of ground ourselves with similar terminology. And then communication is a process in which participants create and share information with one another in order to reach a mutual understanding. So hopefully that will work when you guys go out and try to get your innovations and your diffusion to work. So the case studies that we're going to talk about, the water boiling in a Peruvian village, diffusion that failed, that is in the Everett Rogers book. This is just a fascinating case study that, as Americans, we kind of think, wow, that seems kind of crazy. Why wouldn't you boil water to help your family stay healthy? But because of the culture and the influence of the culture on this thinking, it didn't work out. So controlling scurvy in the British Navy, innovations do not sell themselves. So again, this is another case study that was, just a brilliant look at something that, one, it happened a long time ago. So I think a lot of us are very, very well aware of, these nutritional needs, and it seems like a no-brainer. But at the time, of course, it was something that was new and it was hard to diffuse. So I think it's important that we can try to understand these case studies, because they help us to realize that everything that is different and new is an innovation and has to diffuse, whether it's a new technology, which, a lot of us face, every day, or something simple like just a different way of eating or drinking that would make us healthier. The failed diffusion of the Dvorak keyboard. This is the, we can't give up our QWERTY keyboard. This has a lot to do, I believe this one comes out of Utterback, because it has a lot to do with dominant designs and how impactful that is on the way we think about innovation and the diffusion of innovation. And regardless of whether it's a better design or more efficient, we're very used to the one that we have, and we may not want to give it up. Diffusion of hybrid corn in Iowa, another challenge that is really difficult to get people who are very ingrained in something to do something different. And then the typewriter. So I had the just my personal experience. I'm quite old, so When I started with IBM, we were selling typewriters, but we had a personal computer in the showroom, and we were able to show people. And it was amazing to me because I've always been kind of just super observant of how people, work and what they and how they think about things. And I always love change. So I'm not one of those status quo bias people. I really have always looked forward to something new, and I think it comes from working in technology. When you get something new, you have something else that you get to sell and you can make more money. So we were always looking forward to the newest innovation, the newest thing coming along. And but I watched the diffusion of personal computers take over for typewriters, and it was very very gradual, because we had like the old-fashioned typewriter, then we had a smarter typewriter that could do spell check and things like that, and then we had a correcting typewriter, and then over time we were able to introduce personal computers that were then that then displaced not just the typewriter but the secretary too. So the idea of diffusion and innovation is something that I guess you could probably say I'm obsessed with it. So so many things in my life and my experience have been disruptions, and I have always enjoyed watching it happen, and sometimes it's sad because people have to change and get new jobs and things like that, and that's hard, but always something cool and new comes from it. So I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. So, 4 main elements of diffusion and innovation, which is communicated through certain channels over time among members of a social system. So all these things are very important. So the innovation itself, the fact that it is being communicated through certain channels over time. This doesn't happen immediately. This is something that is gradual, and sometimes a long time passes before an innovation is accepted among members of a social system. So these are very important elements, and something that you need to keep in mind as we roll out our projects. The Earth rewired for diffusion in 2018, 4 billion internet users worldwide, 60 trillion emails sent worldwide this year, 1.9 billion websites. So we certainly are more accustomed to innovation today than we were 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but we still see pushback from innovation. My particular dissertation, software as a service, which to me, having worked for Salesforce and watching it diffuse through Ford, seems like a no-brainer, and yet there's an enormous amount of pushback from something from IT organizations and people who will be displaced, will have to learn something new. So even though we are rewired and we have a lot of opportunity and a lot of awareness of new innovations, there's still pushback. There's still a lot of diffusion that is still has to take place. Okay, let's see. Okay, so characteristics of innovations. Relative advantage is the degree to which an innovation is perceived as better than the idea it supersedes. So, this is, these are important aspects of how a diffusion or how an innovation diffuses. So we need to know that there's a reason, right, to change. There is an advantage. Compatibility is the degree to which an innovation is perceived as being consistent with the existing values, past experience, and needs of potential adopters. So these come out of Everett Rogers. I mean, he was the first one to put these words on paper and say these things are consistent when you're diffusing an innovation. So this compatibility thing, this kind of seems like, okay, is this sort of an oxymoron, right? If it's a new thing, then why would it be compatible with something else? Well, it has to do with like the way that diffusions take place gradually. So we may not, jump right off the cliff for something brand new. Maybe we take some baby steps and we try something that, goes in the direction of the innovation and is a little more compatible with the way we did things before. Complexity is the degree to which an innovation is perceived as difficult to understand and use. This is a huge one. So this is about, end users understanding and organizations understanding how this is going to affect them and how it's going to roll out. And then trialability is the degree to which an innovation may be experimented with on a limited basis. So do I have to just believe you and say, yeah, this is something I'm going to do, or can I look at it myself? And this is something where things like software as a service have a huge advantage because they're running in the cloud. They've got all these instances that are available, and you can literally download it and start working with it without paying for anything, without diffusing it to your organization, without having a big discussion with 4,000 managers. You can start using it and trying it out and understanding what the value proposition is before you go forward. So trialability is a huge thing that really helps people, especially because you need those early adopters to sell within their own social system the importance and advantage of your innovation. So this trialability is a huge thing. And then observability is the degree to which the results of an innovation are visible to others. So for instance, and this diffusion failed, but in that Peruvian village example, people were able to see that people were getting better, but it still didn't matter to them. But observability, though, generally speaking, is about being able to see the other side, right? Well, this guy has implemented, this particular piece of software or technology or new way of doing something, and he's getting, he's getting promoted. He's doing his work faster. His job is easier now. So that observability is something that, becomes part of that communication within the social system and helps that diffusion move forward. So that's what we want to be able to understand how the characteristics of innovation impact an innovation's ability to diffuse. Communication channels. A communication channel is the means by which messages get from one individual to another. So mass media channels are, radio, TV, newspapers, the internet, webcasts, YouTube. We now have lots and lots of influencers, so those are definitely, part of mass, media channels. Interpersonal, face-to-face, phone, email, instant messaging, where I'm just talking to one person and helping them understand how something works. And then hybrid, so social media, Facebook, Twitter, Google and LinkedIn, where, as an individual, you may be talking to people that you don't know or don't know very well and helping them to understand something. Homophilia, the degree to which two or more individuals who interact are similar in certain attributes such as beliefs, education, social status. Heterophilia, the opposite, where people are different. The more effective communication occurs when two or more people are homophilous. Of course, we understand each other, we speak the same language, we're part of the same social system. And language, when you say language, it's not just the words that we're using, but the way that we're communicating and the way that we're putting the words together. So it's not just the actual language, but the way that we are using the language. Sometimes there's a dialect, sometimes there's just a social way of introducing different topics. And then one of the most distinctive problems in the diffusion of innovation is that participants are quite heterophilous. Of course, in a global workplace, we come from all different backgrounds and nationalities and cultures and social systems. And although we may be respectful of one another, we may just not know how to communicate with each other. And that impacts the ability to communicate and, of course, the diffusion of innovation. Time, the innovation decision process by which an individual passes from first knowledge of innovation through its adoption or rejection. Time is a very important aspect of innovation. We have to be realistic about how long it's going to take for these things to diffuse. The innovativeness of the individual or other unit of adoption compared to the members of the social system. So an individual's innovativeness, their ability to understand and to accept an innovation, is unique to each individual. And that level of innovativeness affects the time it takes for an innovation to diffuse. And the innovation's rate of adoption in a system usually measured as the number of members in the system that adopt the innovation in a given time. So all of these things are part of the time that it takes for an innovation to diffuse. Okay, the innovative decision process involves knowledge, an individual's knowledge of the innovation, their ability to persuade individuals, the decision itself on whether or not we're going to diffuse, and then the implementation, the reinvention of the diffusion, and then confirmation that, yes, this is going to take place. Innovativeness is the degree to which an individual or other unit adopts new ideas earlier than other members of a system. So these again are part of Everett Rogers. So we have innovators, we have early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. This is something that, when I first saw this in Everett Rogers, I thought, wow, this has been around for such a long time. This is something that a lot of times we are introduced in the marketing world. So as we introduce a new product, we go through these different stages of diffusion as people start to adopt our product. So innovators, of course, are people who are, the ones standing in line for the newest thing, waiting overnight to get the newest, iPhone or whatever it is. They love innovation. They can't wait to get their hands on the newest thing. Early adopters follow that. So again, this is an observability, right? So we see what those innovators have done and we say, wow, this is kind of cool. Let me try this. Early majority, those are later in the cycle. They have seen what the early adopters and the innovators have done, and they've decided, yeah, this is for me. I'm going to try this. Then you have your late majority. These are people who are like, gosh, is there any way that, I can maybe not do this, or can I wait a little bit longer? Maybe there'll be a sale or something. Maybe I want the next version. They can work the bugs out. And then the laggards, the people who, we've got a painter who literally still has a flip phone. And he went up to one of our houses to paint, and we wanted to see the picture, and he took a picture with a flip phone, and we're like, wow, that doesn't look like the color we picked out. And he goes, oh, hang on, my assistant here has a better phone, let me have him take a picture. And we're like, what are you using? He's like, oh, I have a flip phone. I'm like, my God, how old is that? And he's like, oh no, it's new, I just got it. I'm like, you're still selling these old things? So Tim is a laggard. It has been years since this, innovation has taken place, and the guy is still using a flip phone. So there are people who just are not going to accept it until there is nothing else to do. So Tim is going to buy a flip phone until they don't sell flip phones anywhere. And that's all there is to it. So laggards are way, way down the line, and nobody really counts them, in trying to, move a product forward, because long before the laggards get on, the product has, innovated many, many, many times. And so they're really not part of the marketing equation. But, once they get on, of course, it's there. So here's our rate of adoption. This is an S-curve, and this helps us to understand, how we get more and more people into the diffusion process. So as time goes by, you're looking at how those different groups of innovators, or adopters, I guess, are coming on board. So you can see on the very left side of that curve, those are your innovators, and then you've got your early adopters, and then you get into the late adopters and the late majority, and then your laggards, and you're starting to level off, and that's kind of where you're barely getting anybody else online. So this is our very typical S-curve. Okay, so I am going to stop here because this is really a bigger discussion, and we'll come back in our next session and cover this one.